As a parent, you think when you send your kids away to camp that they're going to be safe and sound, tucked away in their cabins after a long day of swimming and laughing. But 3 little girls in 1977 did not come home from Girl Scout camp. And this is their story. Hello. There is about to be a ton of blizzard conditions in Kansas City. There's a blizzard coming and it's just going to basically dump itself on Kansas City. So we are going to talk murder while we're inside, warm and cozies, in our muuuuurs. Are we ready? Let's go. So today we are talking about the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. I want to start off this video saying trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning, trigger warning, for everything. Kids, SA, violence. This is a rough one. This is a really, really rough one. So if that is not your jam, then peanut butter on over to a different video. I completely understand. I would not want anyone to feel triggered or anything of the such. But this story is very important because, first of all, it needs attention. And second of all, the story, like, these 3 girls need the end justice that they deserve. And we will get there. So, welcome. Just letting you know, I am going to be looking at my notes. I've had commenters before say, stop looking over on the other side. I'm sorry I'm not looking you in the eye. But I am looking at my notes. I want to get this right. I want to get the dates right, the names right. So that is what I'm going to do. I apologize in advance. Also, I apologize that I have pups. So they might bark, they might go crazy. Who knows? We'll see. Right now, Gus is eating something he shouldn't be eating. So, yay. All right, so first of all, I wanted to kind of start off this by saying that I could have easily been one of these girls, and I think a lot of us could have been. This is a Midwestern story. This happens in Oklahoma. I grew up in Kansas, and I grew up going to Girl Scout camp. I think I only went one time. I was kind of terrified. I remember halfway through, they were like, do you want to call your mom? And I'm like, yes, just bawling. So I was scared. And the experience of Girl Scout camp, they don't tell you what it's going to be like. So for me, and what I kind of get for these girls was you get on a bus, you go out in the middle of nowhere, you're alone except for your counselors, and you just expected to be okay and survive and be all right. It's scary. You're away from your parents, you're away from your home. It is a terrifying experience. So I do remember being terrified. I remember we had to sleep in like a tree house. That's where they wanted us to sleep. It was like a huge tree that they had built all of these like rooms in. And halfway through the night, one of the girls in my cabin fell because there's like bunk beds. She fell out of the top bed, and we were like, we're not doing this anymore. We're terrified. So we walked by ourselves back to the home, like their home base, which was just basically like a kind of community center. And we slept there on the floor. So we were by ourselves. A lot of the time we were up in a tree. I mean, there was a lot of times where we were alone. And when I think about that, I always think about these girls and how their experience must have been. So let's get into this story. If you guys have any stories of summer camp or Girl Scout camp or whatever, leave them in the comments. I would love to hear your adventures and what you went through as a summer camp. So let's get into it here. All right. In the summer of 1977, 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer was getting ready for camp. She was excited to go to her first camp experience. I am sure the excitement was mixed with fear. And I'm sure that was what it was like for all of the girls, being away from their family. Lori was the oldest of 5 kids, and she absolutely loved her siblings. She was also a loving and very kind girl. Also getting ready for camp was 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner. She went by Denise. In the weeks leading up to camp, she was excited to go, but then it came like the day before, and she wasn't so sure that she wanted to go. She told her mother, "I don't want to go," and her mom said, "Just give it a try. If you don't like it, we'll come and get you, and it'll be fine." So Denise was a smart kid, well above intelligence of the rest of her classmates and her peers. And then also getting ready and preparing for camp was 9-year-old Michele Heather Guse. 2 weeks away at an overnight camp was a big deal for these girls. I remember the excitement and the fear, so I can imagine it was the same for them. That it was fun and like, okay, I'm happy and I'm excited, but I'm also scared to be away from my family. A total of 140 Girl Scouts, including those 3 girls, were headed to Camp Scott in Mays County, Oklahoma. This was Sunday, in the morning of June 12th, 1977. The campers were dropped off at the Girl Scout headquarters by their parents to be bused to the camp. The girls all chatted, started making friends, started picking who they were going to sit by, and they laughed and giggled as this bus bounced down a dirt road with a sign saying Camp Scott. They have arrived. When they got off the bus, Lori, Denise, and Michele all grabbed their gear and headed to the Kiowa unit. So all of the units were named after indigenous tribes. They got the Kiowa. It was the furthest unit from the camp counselor's tent. The way the camp was outlined is a very hard to explain thing. I will try to insert a picture, but I will also put them on Instagram if you want to see them. But it kind of went in a U, but it was more like a line. So it's like, kind of like that, kind of twisted. And the Kiowa camp was all the way at one end. The camp counselor's tent was all the way at the other end. So they were pretty far from the camp counselor's tent. And this tent, the Kiowa unit, was behind the showers. The 3 girls were sharing tent number 7. Now, when you think of a tent in camping, you think of a camping tent. But that's not what these were. This was between like a tent and a cabin. They had hardwood floors, and then thick white fabric hanging down in a triangle or a teepee kind of shape for the roof. Inside were mattresses for those campers. The campers' tents were all in a line near the woods, so they're backed up to the woods. And this is a thick wooded area, like very dense woods, very dangerous woods. The counselor's tent was unit 1, and it, like I said, it was kind of in a half circle, starting with 1 and then going down to 7. I'll post pictures, like I said, on my social media, or hopefully can insert them in here so you can see. So the first night at camp was a pretty normal camp night. All of the campers ate dinner in the Great Hall, and then unfortunately a strong storm hit the camp. It rained really hard, and all the campers were told to go to their tents. The campers were all pretty rowdy and had trouble falling asleep that first night. I'm sure it was nerves. It was the first time at camp, and you're away from family. Also, you're stuck inside, so that was a lot on the first night. Some of the girls decided to write letters home. Denise wrote a letter to her mom. This is kind of a heart-wrenching letter because it says, "Mom, I don't like camp and I want to come home." And when you find out what happens, it just breaks your heart for her. So let's talk about some of the older counselors. So there's Carl Wilhite. She's 18. Susan Ewig, 18, and Dee Elder, who was 20. They were assigned as counselors to the Kiowa camp, and they were assigned to look after 27 children. That's a lot. It's a lot of kids to take care of, especially in dangerous woods. But those teen counselors were assigned that group of children, and they were just supposed to help them if needed, basically. Look after them, keep things going in the camp. The camp counselors pretty much ran the camp day to day. There was different activities, and those camp counselors were the ones that took everybody from event to event, and like I said, kept everybody safe, healthy, and ready to go. There was a camp director. This is Barbara Day. She lived on site with her husband, but she didn't do a lot of the day-to-day camp things. That was the counselor. So the night ended and everyone got tucked into their beds. At some time before 10 p.m., the counselor of the nearby Comanche camp saw a light in the forest moving north towards Kiowa camp. But she wasn't really sure what it was, so she didn't really say much. Then at 10 p.m., Dee Elder made a tent check of the Kiowa camp and was satisfied that everything was fine, no big deal. 2 hours later, at around midnight, Carla Wilhite escorted some of the girls to the toilets that were near the tents. Carla warned the girls in tent 6 to stop making noise at about 1:30 a.m. At that same time, she heard some strange sounds coming from behind the tent. The noise was coming from those deep, dark woods behind the campers. It was a noise she had a hard time describing. She explained that she had never and will never and have never heard anything like it before. It was described as a low, guttural sound, but she was unsure whether it was animal or human. Whenever she would shine her flashlight in the direction of the noise, it stopped. So she looked a few times, but figured it was a wild animal, something she did not want to play with and feared for her safety against. She then returned to her tent to sleep, thinking it would probably be gone by morning. But she continued to hear the noise every once in a while throughout the night. Now we have to remember these are teens, not really sure what is going on in the woods as well. So just keep that in mind. A lot of people are like, why didn't she do something? I think it's one of those things where she probably thought that it was an animal and was like, oh, well, you know. But let's keep in mind these are under 20. These kids are under 20 years old. So, yeah. Early the next morning around 6 a.m., Carla's alarm went off. She had set it early to be able to go shower before the rest of the campers woke up and got ready for the day. She stepped out of her tent and she noticed something under the tree by the roadside. She saw what looked like sleeping bags. She walked over to move them out of the roadway, and what she saw will forever be stuck in her mind. She saw 3 sleeping bags, and near one of them was a body of a young girl. She was lying naked, facing up. After realizing what she saw, her mind raced. She said in the Keeper of the Ashes documentary that her first thought was that a young girl had gotten scared and ran into the woods and hit her head on a tree. Then she said it was an outrageous thought, but she would never had thought that a girl would be murdered just feet away from her bed. When Carla realized what she was seeing, she ran. She ran as fast as she could back to her bunkmates. She woke them up, and one ran to the nurse, and Carla ran to the camp director. She stood shaking, saying, "One of the girls is dead in the road." Carla, Barbara's husband, and the nurse ran back to the scene. The nurse could tell right away that the girl was dead. She had massive head injuries, and her hands were tied behind her back. At the same time, the other counselors were doing head counts. Someone shouted, "There's no one in tent 7. There were now 3 little girls missing. It took a moment for police and help to arrive out at the camp. So in the meantime, Richard Day, who was Barbara's husband, decided to place a sleeping bag over the bottom half of the girl that was exposed. He also went and opened the 2 other sleeping bags. There, stuffed down inside, were the bodies of the 2 other girls. This is now 3 murders in the first 24 hours of a camp for kids. Right away, Highway Patrol Officer Henry Berry was called and rushed to the scene. By 8 a.m. on June 13th, Sheriff Glenn Pete Weaver called the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation, or the OSBI, to get more help. This was a triple homicide that rocked this tiny police force. They didn't have enough manpower, and they also knew this was going to be a huge case. As investigators swarmed on the camp, the counselors had to come up with a plan, and fast. They were quick thinkers, and they knew they were scared, but they also had to help 140 campers through this massive, devastating event. They decided to tell the campers, because they were loud and rowdy last night, that they were going on an early morning hike. They took some campers through the woods as to not see the bodies and directed the rest of them to the meeting hall. They kept the campers calm, and they are true heroes for that. All the campers were bussed home, and the news was breaking within hours. Police officers were sent to the 3 homes to tell the families that their girls were not coming back. The girl outside of the sleeping bag was 10-year-old Doris Denise Milner. The ones in their sleeping bags were 8-year-old Lori Lee Farmer and 9-year-old Michele Heather Guse. Immediately, the investigative team went to work. Who would have expected this? But they were warned months before. In April 1977, a few months before the camp had started, Camp Scott was already in a buzz. Camp counselors filled the camp for an annual training session. They discussed how to conduct a safe and fun summer for the girls. During one of these training sessions, a camp counselor discovered that her belongings had been ransacked and her donuts had been stolen. Inside the empty donut box was a disturbing, handwritten note stating in capital letters, "We are on a mission to kill 3 girls in tent 1. The counselor took it straight to the director, but she threw the box away. calling it a cruel joke. In her defense, who would have ever thought this statement was true? But it was, and the investigators were on a mission to find out who did this and why. That is where we are going to end for part 1. In part 2, we have so much more to come, and I hope that you will join me. So I will see you guys next time. Have a great, safe day, and we will see you next time. Bye. Hi guys, I just wanted to say I hope you enjoyed this video. If you like any of the content for Code 187, please click that subscribe button, that like button, that share button. Help us out, help us grow. You can find us on your favorite podcast platforms. Yeah, check us out on there. Give us some ratings. Tell us what you think. We're also across every social media on Code 187. So we're on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I think that's it. And of course YouTube. So please, please, please subscribe if you like our content and spread the word. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.